Are you stuck in the same loops over and over, aren't you? You just closed another trade early. Again. The setup was perfect, your analysis was solid, the entry was clean. But the moment price pulled back 0.3%, your hand moved to the exit button like it had a mind of its own. And now you're watching that same trade run exactly where you predicted, without you in it. Here's the part that really stings. This isn't the first time. It's not even the 10th time. It's a pattern, a loop you can't seem to break. And deep down, you know the truth. The market isn't stopping you from winning. You are. This is self-sabotage, and it's destroying more trading accounts than bad strategies ever could. By the end of this video, you'll have the tools to fix this. Here's what most traders don't realize. 90% of trading failure has nothing to do with technical analysis. A study from the University of California tracked 66,000 retail traders and found something shocking. The traders who failed weren't using worse strategies. They weren't less educated. They weren't analyzing charts incorrectly. They were sabotaging themselves, cutting winners early, holding losers too long, overtrading after wins, freezing after losses, breaking their own rules at the worst possible moments. Sound familiar? Because if you've ever looked at your trading journal and thought, why do I keep doing this to myself? You're not alone. But here's the difference between you and the 95% who quit. You're still here. You're still searching. And that means you're ready to understand what's really happening inside your skull when you self-sabotage. Because once you see it, you can fix it. The mirror effect. Your trades are showing you something. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. When you cut that winner early, what were you really afraid of? Was it the loss, or was it being wrong? When you held that loser until it destroyed your weekly gains, what were you really hoping for? Was it a reversal? Or was it avoiding the admission that you made a mistake? The market doesn't just test your strategy, it reveals your psychology. Every trade you take is a mirror, and what it shows you isn't always pretty. Research from MIT revealed something fascinating about trader behavior. When participants were asked to hold positions that went against them, their brains showed activity patterns identical to physical threat responses. Heart rate spiking, cortisol flooding, fight or flight activation. Your brain literally treats a losing trade the same way it would treat a predator attack. That's not a personality flaw, that's biology. But here's where it gets interesting. This is where the game-changing difference emerges. The traders who overcame this response didn't eliminate the fear. They recognized it. They saw the pattern. They understood that their impulse to exit early wasn't protecting them. It was their wounded ego trying to avoid discomfort. One professional trader put it this way: I realized I was closing trades the same way I used to avoid difficult conversations as a kid. I'd bail before things got uncomfortable. Think about your last 5 losing trades. How many of them were actually bad setups, and how many were good setups that you mismanaged because you couldn't handle the emotional tension? The market isn't your opponent, it's your therapist, and it will keep showing you the same lesson until you finally learn it. So stop resisting. If you keep ignoring these lessons instead of learning from them, you'll never break this cycle. The paradox of control. Why trying harder makes it worse. Here's something that sounds completely backward. The more you try to control your trades, the more you sabotage them. Most traders think discipline means forcing yourself to follow rules, white-knuckling through discomfort, suppressing emotions. But research shows this approach actually increases the likelihood of emotional blowouts. Psychologists call it ironic process theory. When you try to suppress a thought, you make it stronger. Tell yourself, don't think about elephants, and guess what floods your mind? Same thing happens in trading. Don't overtrade, don't overtrade, don't overtrade. And then what do you do after 3 losses in a row? You overtrade. So you need to stop making this an obsession. It's only hurting you. Professional trading firms discovered this years ago. They don't teach traders to suppress emotions. They teach them to observe emotions. There's a difference. Suppression is resistance. Observation is awareness. When you resist an emotion, you give it power. When you observe it, you neutralize it. One trader at SMB Capital described his breakthrough like this: I stopped trying to not be scared. I started noticing when I was scared, and that tiny shift changed everything. Because once you notice the fear, you create space. Space between stimulus and response. Space where conscious choice lives. That space is where self-sabotage dies. Now observe instead of reacting. This simple step will change everything. The winning streak trap. Success as a setup for destruction. You know what the most dangerous moment in trading is? It's not after a big loss, it's after a big win. Researchers at the University of Chicago analyzed thousands of trading accounts and found a shocking pattern. Traders were 34% more likely to take impulsive, oversized positions immediately after winning streaks. Why? Because winning feels like validation. It feels like you've figured it out, like you're finally in sync with the market. Your confidence spikes, your dopamine floods, and your brain whispers a dangerous lie. You can't lose. That's when you size up. That's when you take the marginal setup you would have ignored yesterday. That's when you break your risk management rules because this one feels different. The moment you start feeling complacent, you need to step away from the screen. John Coates, a former Wall Street trader turned neuroscientist, measured testosterone levels in traders throughout the day. What he found was remarkable. Winning traders showed elevated testosterone in the afternoon, which sounds good until you understand what that actually does. Higher testosterone increases risk-taking behavior. It makes you feel invincible. It makes you trade like you're betting house money. One trader described it perfectly. My best days set me up for my worst days. I'd win big, feel untouchable, then blow it all on one stupid revenge trade the next morning. The market doesn't punish you for losing. It punishes you for believing you've won. So here's the shift. Start getting suspicious after wins. Not pessimistic, not fearful, just aware. Because the version of you that shows up after 3 green days, that's the version most likely to sabotage everything you just built. So remember, as you win more, you need to be more careful instead of getting complacent. Let things going well remind you that you need to focus more, not let it distract you. If you feel complacency coming, don't forget that mistakes and losses will follow. The phantom pattern, when your edge becomes your enemy. You've probably noticed this. You develop a strategy, you backtest it, you trade it successfully for weeks, and then suddenly it stops working. You start losing, you panic, you tweak the system, you change indicators, you flip time frames, and now you're lost in a maze of your own creation. But here's what actually happened. Your edge didn't disappear. Your trust in it did. Markets change. Sometimes they trend. Sometimes they chop. Sometimes volatility is high. Sometimes it's dead. A strategy that works beautifully in one condition can get destroyed in another. That's not failure. That's normal. But most traders can't accept that. So they sabotage their own system by constantly changing it. Only the elite minority stays committed to their plan when everything goes wrong. Even when facing consecutive losing trades, they focus on maintaining discipline instead of changing their strategy. Professional traders have a different approach. They don't ask, "Why isn't this working right now?" They ask, "What market condition am I in, and does my strategy fit?" Some of the most successful traders Schwager interviewed in the new market, wizards had losing months, sometimes losing quarters, but they didn't abandon their edge. They scaled down, observed, and waited for conditions to shift back. One trader said, "I realized I was treating my strategy like a magic spell. When it didn't work, I thought it was broken. But strategies aren't magic, they're tools, and tools only work in the right context." So if you've been jumping from system to system, here's your permission. Stop searching for the perfect strategy. Start understanding the conditions where your current strategy actually works. Because self-sabotage often looks like searching for something better when you haven't even mastered what you have. Stop constantly changing strategies. The loss aversion trap. Why you hold losers and cut winners. Let's talk about the most common form of self-sabotage, cutting winners early and holding losers too long. You know you do it. You know it's wrong. But you keep doing it anyway. Why? Because your brain is wired for survival, not profit. Nobel Prize-winning research by Daniel Kahneman revealed something called loss aversion. Humans feel the pain of a loss roughly twice as intensely as the pleasure of an equivalent gain. Losing $100 hurts more than winning $100 feels good. This creates a psychological trap. When you're in a winning trade and it pulls back, your brain screams, "Lock it in before it disappears." When you're in a losing trade and it moves against you, your brain whispers, "Maybe it'll come back. Just hold a little longer." This isn't a personality flaw. This is evolutionary programming. Your ancestors survived by avoiding loss more than pursuing gain. But in trading, that same instinct destroys you. One professional trader described his breakthrough: "I stopped trying to fight loss aversion. I just acknowledged it. Every time I felt the urge to close a winner early, I'd say out loud, 'That's loss aversion talking.' And that tiny bit of awareness gave me the power to not act on it." Here's the shift. Your emotions aren't the enemy. They're information. Fear tells you where you're vulnerable. Greed tells you where you're overconfident. Frustration tells you where you're attached to outcomes. The traders who win aren't emotionless robots. They're deeply self-aware humans who've learned to translate emotional signals into conscious decisions. The perfectionism disease, when high standards become self-sabotage. You wait for the perfect setup. You analyze every detail. You double-check your confluences. You wait for 5 confirmations before entering. And then the trade runs without you. Again, perfectionism sounds like discipline, but in trading it's often just fear disguised as standards. Because here's the truth. There is no perfect trade. There's only probability. And while you're waiting for absolute certainty, traders with lower standards are taking profitable trades with 60% probability setups. Research shows that perfectionistic traders actually perform worse than those with realistic standards. Why? Because perfectionism creates analysis paralysis. You're so afraid of being wrong that you become incapable of being right. You can't move. You can't decide. You just watch. You regret it. And that pushes you to make mistakes on your next trade. You're living the same loops over and over. One trader described it this way: "I realized I wasn't being disciplined. I was being a coward. I was hiding behind perfect setups to avoid the discomfort of execution." The antidote? Good enough is good enough. Professional traders don't wait for 5-star setups. They take 3-star setups with proper risk management. They understand that edge comes from consistency, not perfection. So if you've been telling yourself you're just being selective, ask honestly, are you being selective or are you being scared? Because there's a difference. Selective traders have criteria and execute when criteria are met. Scared traders move the goalposts every time opportunity appears. They find excuses not to evaluate positions. There is no perfect position. There are only probabilities. The comparison poison. Trading. Other people's trades. You see someone post a massive win, 200% gain, perfect entry, perfect exit, and suddenly your steady 5% weekly gains feel like failure. So you start chasing. You take bigger risks. You look for home runs instead of base hits, and you blow up your account trying to become someone you're not. This is comparison-based self-sabotage, and it's killing more traders than they realize. Social media has turned trading into a highlight reel. Everyone posts their wins. Nobody posts their losses. Everyone shows their $10,000 day. Nobody shows the 3 months of grinding that came before it. Your brain sees these wins and creates a false baseline. It starts believing that anything less than spectacular is failure. But here's what the new market wizards revealed. The greatest traders in the world have completely different strategies. Some scalp, some swing, some trend follow, some mean revert. There is no universal path. There's only your path. One professional trader said, "I spent 2 years trying to trade like my mentor. I lost money every month. Then I stopped trying to be him and started being me. Within 6 months, I was profitable." So here's your shift. Stop measuring your success against other traders. Start measuring it against your own process. Did you follow your rules? Did you manage risk properly? Did you execute without emotional interference? That's the real scoreboard, not someone else's P&L, yours. And if you can make that shift, something remarkable happens. You stop sabotaging yourself trying to be someone else. You start building yourself into someone the market can't break. Stop letting social media influence you. If you can't stop being influenced, stop using it. It's sabotaging you too. The revenge trading. Death spiral. When emotion becomes strategy. You take a loss. It stings. But you tell yourself it's fine. Part of the game. Then you take another loss. Now you're frustrated. You start questioning your edge. You take a third loss. And something inside you snaps. The alarm bells are ringing. Even though you've only lost 3 trades in a row, you're throwing your plan out the window. Suddenly, you're not trading your plan anymore. You're trading your pain. You're trying to win back what you lost. You size up. You take marginal setups, you ignore your rules, and you turn a manageable loss into a catastrophic one. The market wanted to take your psychology from you, and it succeeded. You dismissed your plan again. This is revenge trading, and it's the fastest way to destroy an account. Neuroscience explains exactly why this happens. When you experience consecutive losses, your amygdala, the fear center of your brain, becomes hyperactive. Meanwhile, your prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational decision-making, becomes suppressed. Translation: losing repeatedly makes you dumber and more emotional. One professional trader described his lowest moment. I lost $3,000 on 3 bad trades. Then I revenge traded myself into a $15,000 hole trying to get it back. The market didn't do that to me. I did it to myself. The solution isn't to avoid losses. It's to have a circuit breaker, a rule that says, after 2 consecutive losses, you stop, you walk away, you reset. Because the version of you that shows up after 2 losses isn't capable of making good decisions. You're not trading your strategy anymore. You're trading your ego, and your ego will get you killed. So here's your new rule. 2 strikes, and you're out. Not out of trading forever. Out for the day. Out until you've processed the emotion and returned to baseline. Because the traders who survive aren't the ones who never lose. They're the ones who stop themselves before a small loss becomes a terminal one. They're the ones who aren't slaves to their emotions. They're the ones who know how to digest losses. The isolation trap. Suffering alone. In silence. You blow up another trade. You break your rules again. You feel like a failure. And you don't tell anyone. Because admitting it feels like weakness. So you suffer in silence. You carry the shame. You convince yourself you're the only one struggling. But here's the truth. Every trader has been exactly where you are. The pros, the legends, the wizards. Every single one of them has sat in front of a screen feeling like an imposter. Feeling like they don't belong. Feeling like they're one bad trade away from quitting forever. The difference? They talked about it. They found mentors. They joined communities. They stopped pretending to have it all figured out. They didn't act like they knew everything. They weren't afraid to ask for help, to seek guidance. Instead of running away, instead of pretending it didn't exist, they created solutions. One trader described his breakthrough. I spent 3 years losing in silence, too proud to admit I was struggling. Then I joined a trading group and realized everyone was fighting the same demons. That vulnerability saved my career. This is crucial. Self-sabotage thrives in isolation. When you're alone with your failures, your brain tells you stories. Stories about how you're uniquely broken, how everyone else has it figured out, how you're just not cut out for this. But the moment you share your struggle, those stories lose power. You realize you're not broken, you're just human, and humans need community. So here's your challenge. Find one person, a mentor, a peer, a community, someone you can be honest with about your struggles. Because the traders who make it aren't the ones who never struggle. They're the ones who refuse to struggle alone. This isn't an easy path. Walking it alone isn't impossible, but it's hard. The identity shift, from self-saboteur to self-sovereign. Let's bring this full circle. Self-sabotage isn't a series of random mistakes. It's a pattern, a loop, a role you've unconsciously accepted. But here's the good news. Roles can be rewritten. Identities can be rebuilt. And the moment you stop seeing yourself as someone who sabotages, you stop sabotaging. This isn't positive thinking. This isn't affirmations. This is identity-level transformation. Professional traders don't avoid mistakes because they're disciplined. They avoid mistakes because they become someone who doesn't make those mistakes. It's not effort, it's identity. One trader said it perfectly. I used to be someone who cut winners early. Now I'm someone who rides runners. I didn't change my strategy. I changed who I was. We must stop being slaves to our emotions. We are more than that. So here's the process. First, name your pattern. Don't judge it. Don't shame it. Just see it clearly. I cut winners early when price pulls back. Second, understand why it happens. Go deep. Confront yourself. Because I'm more afraid of losing gains than missing bigger gains. Third, decide who you're becoming. I'm becoming someone who trusts their analysis and lets trades develop. And finally, act from that identity. Not perfectly, not all at once, but consistently. One trade at a time. Because you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your identity, and the market always knows who you really are. It rewards or punishes you accordingly. What determines whether you'll make money in the markets is this identity you build. Don't be a slave to your emotions. Build the right identity and become a slave to that. Your next trade isn't a position, it's a decision. You've just walked through the anatomy of self-sabotage. You've seen the mirror effect, the control paradox, the winning streak trap, the phantom pattern, the loss aversion trap, the perfectionism disease, the comparison poison, the revenge trading spiral, the isolation trap, and finally, the identity shift. But here's the truth. Awareness doesn't change your life. Action does. So I want you to do something powerful right now. Think about the last trade you sabotaged, not the one you lost because of bad analysis, the one you lost because of you. What pattern were you trapped in? Was it cutting winners early, holding losers too long, revenge trading, comparison chasing? Now comment that pattern below. Not for me, not for anyone else, but for you. Because when you name it publicly, you strip it of power. You turn a hidden wound into a visible scar. And scars remind you of battles you survived. If this resonated with you, if you saw yourself in these patterns, share this with another trader who's stuck in the same loop. Because we don't grow alone, we grow together. And remember, the market isn't stopping you from winning. You are. But the moment you see that clearly, everything changes. Make your next trade a decision about who you're becoming, not just what you're buying. I'll see you in the next one.